Hello and welcome to another Near Reading cast. My name is Johnny, and today we have some more footage from the warm-up matches we did in preparation for the Oxford Store Championship. So once again I'm playing James. So on the left is James with his Kate deck, prepaid variant, and on the right I'm playing a glacier Foundry deck with some res trickery, in particular Eliza's toy box. So James obviously has a splash for legwork in this shape of deck, which is a nice include. I didn't ice HQ. I was not suspecting any threat from Shaper and paid very quickly by giving up a 3-point agenda. Apart from that, his turn was cleanse chip, sure gamble, and draw. Maybe it's worth it though, because I got the opportunity to res and Eliza's and use it to res a Wotan to defend it. I'm a big fan of Eliza's toy box. It, for those who don't know, it allows you to spend all 3 clicks to res any card, ignoring all costs. So you could use it to res assets, but the best economy for it is to res incredibly expensive pieces of ice. And Wotan's a good example. A piece of advice to anyone who may ever play against Eliza's toy box: you must trash it immediately. So if you ever use Eliza's toy box, the first thing you should use it on is something that defends itself. Even at the expense of, as you can see, I only got 1 credit. Even at the expense of other servers. I only had 1 credit, as James expected. I couldn't res the piece of ice over R&D. Unfortunately, it wasn't nice. He got a little bit too cocky, perhaps. The nice thing about having only 1 cheap piece of ice in your starting hand is the Foundry, as well, is that it duplicates. As soon as they force you to res it, you get the opportunity to get a copy of it, and you can use that as well. It's another one of those identities that benefits from resing. Similar to some extent to Blue Sun, which I mentioned in a previous video. Often as a runner you want to force the corporation to res as much ice as they can to find the weaknesses and force them back economically. But forcing the Foundry to res ice isn't the end of the world, because it just gives them more ice to defend other threats, defend against other threats. So, trashing the ice with the Parasite on it, it would have died the following turn anyway, so I like that. I don't actually remember what I replaced it with, but it could easily have been the other ice wall that I drew. So, James already has a couple. James already has a couple of clone chips on the table, and with a Parasite, I can worry about Parasite recursion. Although, obviously, having the opportunity to use the Foundry to res another incredibly powerful piece of ice, Archer, gives me the upper hand for R&D. So James builds up his economy. One of the things people often forget about Wotan is it doesn't actually, it's not a hard end to run. You can trick your way through it at the cost of various things, one of which is trashing a program, so he would need to have a program on the table to do that. And one play I often find with Eliza's, when I've got some big ice resed, I'll spend a turn just installing multiple pieces of ice so that I can have a few turns of Eliza's to build up my defences. So James has got hold of David and decides to run the remote. He can obviously break 3 of the 4 subroutines, so he just has to choose a thing that he can subroutine can break. He chose to spend the clicks, which I'm not sure about that. He could have spent 3 credits. It depends what he values a click at. He also could have trashed the David after breaking subroutines because it's kind of useless now. He does have clone chips on the table to get it back if he needs to. I feel like he could have done more with the clicks, but obviously I don't know what's in his hand.
Yeah, maybe. Like, it was only going to get worse, right? Like, it could have got worse.
And at the very least, he's trashed the Elizas, which he definitely needs to do. I did immediately install in the server though. So James has found his first prepaid. Based on the amount of event economy, it's reasonable to assume at this point that it's a kind of prepaid economy deck that will have a lot of events like that. So I actually snuck out an agenda, thinking he'd hope it was an asset and wait for me to res it maybe to attack it, or would just take a turn kind of building up. Fortunately I was right. Thanks to the synergy between the Accelerated Beast Test and the Foundry, you should pretty much always fire it. Fire Accelerated Beast Test. There's an argument against it towards the end of the game, when your defences are up and the Foundry ability has filtered a lot of ice out of R&D. There's a real risk of hitting 3 non-ice cards, and you don't want to leave yourself weak if you think you're in a decent position. I think here I actually drew 2 pieces of ice, took 2 pieces of ice and a Jackson. I was tempted to just pick one, but I think, yeah, they were both half decent. I could have put the ice wall back in, for instance, to keep the Jackson. I'm not sure. Jackson's always useful to have in the deck. I'm to know a little bit about where to put it. I was originally going to put it on the remote to make it a kind of stronger scoring remote. I decided in the end just to put it on R&D, feeling that Shaper would probably have a lot of R&D pressure, and I didn't want to leave myself open to, say, another David play, bursting through the Archer with a Maker's Eye or something. So installing ice on the remote and a card in the remote and just taking a credit. There's a definite threat here that James needs to be able to respond to. I mean, well, worst case I guess is it's an agenda, but a not too distant runner-up would be another Eliza's with a large piece of ice. Like, let's say that was something big like a Janus or a 2.0 Bioroid maybe. I can make that scoring remote all but impenetrable. Having said that, he does have 2 self-mods on the table and 2 clone chips and a fairly decent economy. He's got a prepaid on the table, so when he picks a target, he should be able to burst in. So in fact, the card remote was another ABT. So I was 4-3 up at this point. I thought my defences were actually okay, and I briefly considered not firing it. But but I didn't want to be too conservative. I did trigger it in the end, just because I wanted to be able to test myself for, say, a tournament position. I wouldn't have done that in a tournament, and I missed. There was no ice. So Dusted Launch and Archives, even if I could do my Ice Wall trick again, like on turn 1, he would be able to get in. Fortunately, I did not hit any agendas, but I did hit my second and final Jackson and some other useful assets.
That's last game.
So I got away with it that time, but ABT, when it misses, just the worst. So we're on an HQ. I was able to Resin Ice Wall to make him use a self mod. I triggered the Foundry stupidly, even though because I forgot that the third Ice Wall had already been parasited. So Lady, it's not particularly efficient against Ice Wall. Because the counters don't last forever, although obviously it kind of blows through an Eli. And James pulls a Vitruvius. Incredibly annoying. I recall at the time that was my only... It's the only gender in my hand. So he's had very few accesses, but it's pulled 5 points. Nevertheless, I feel like I'm in a strong position. There are a lot of recursion options on the table for him, but I feel I've got decent ice on R&D and the remote. As I said, I don't have any more agendas in hand. Peak Efficiency is a great card in this deck. In fact, doing it for a net 4 as here is fairly inefficient. It can very easily net me 8 or 9 credits by the end of a game if I've had Eliza's available for a lot. So just a Conjure on the outside, but I like the mix of ice types. Although James quite cleverly just clone chips in for a Parasite. Just blowed away straight away. Lady blows through Eli, and then the same David trick on Wotan. Spins his clicks. And it isn't Eliza's, which he trashes immediately. And straight after that run, we both reacted the same way. So it was incredibly annoying. But he was annoyed that he didn't get an agenda, and I was annoyed that he blew up my precious Eliza's. So I installed the remote and took 2 credits, but then changed my mind and decided to advance instead, which seems dangerous because I feel like I'm just signalling to James now that this is an agenda, whereas before he might have ignored it, thinking maybe it was another Eliza's, but I don't know, Adonis or some other asset. So he's trying to work out if he can get in. He does have a Lady, so he can get through the Eli pretty easily. He could spend clicks and trash program, but on the Wotan, but he wouldn't have the credits to break it. So he goes through the motions.
So I encounter this, I'll spend 2 clicks. Or I can't be 3.
So he rolls it back. It's not really a problem. I didn't realise it was that close actually. But that does tell me he's happy to take a brain damage if the situation calls for it. So I decided to give up on the remote and start drawing. Continue building up his rig. To be honest, with self mod and clone chip and you know, a decent economy, but he's falling short of a little bit at the moment. The rig is kind of there for that's the shape away. I felt like he had to wait fairly long to get his first prepaid. I don't know. I haven't actually played a prepaid Kate deck, so I don't know. But I feel like you would want a mulligan for a prepaid in your opening hand, and you had to wait a little while to do it. So the reason I advanced that the previous term is that I kind of wanted to get a credit, a counter on the Sword of Vitruvius, because it'd be useful. It gives me the opportunity to pull back Saint Eliza's if I need one. I could get an Jackson back, or economy, peak efficiency, that kind of thing. It also, and this is a kind of secret win condition for this deck, because it has a couple of 3-point agendas in it. The win option isn't there anymore. It also has a couple of punitives in it. And I don't know if it's called Vitruvius means I only need to have one in hand, because I could do some economy, say, in the first click, play one on the second click, and then use the Vitruvius to get it back into my hand for no click to play it for a second time. And I quite like that. I've got a few surprise wins from that. Also, if I have two in hand, I can use a Vitruvius counter to pull back, say, a peak efficiency to help me out economy-wise. And it tends to be a splash that opponents don't necessarily expect from HB. Although, having said that, in our most recent Store Championships, the eventual winner, Brendan, had a Hasbira deck that had large agendas and punitives in it. So James installs his second prepaid and then plays Lucky Find. The profit from cards like Lucky Find, Sure Gamble, become just really good when you've got multiple prepaids on the table. And the ease with which you can go from nothing to the money to get into any server is terrifying to play against.
Yeah.
So I'm installing the remote, and then I read it. It's actually an executive boot camp. There's only one of that deck, but I like it to get in a pinch Jacksons, but also to get Eliza's. It's unfair to say the deck revolves around Eliza's, but it's such a strong card, and the deck is kind of engineered towards using it as effectively as possible. I think at this point also the unres piece of ice over HQ was an Archer, I believe. It was certainly something big that I was trying to get rezzed and kept trying to get Eliza's down to get it up. James kept crushing it.
Be happy to leave you. If he gets in, it's going to spend a bunch of money. So that's good, I guess.
I'll make his eye.
Oh. Okay, who knows? This could be good.
So James is using Maker's Eye. The ice wall is straightforward, but he's going to use the clone chip to install an Atman at strength 6, which is incredibly annoying because it also nullifies other archers I might have. So he can break through the archer for just 3 credits if he doesn't mind me getting 2. Not as taxing as I would have hoped. He sees some mystery cards that I couldn't work out what they were, except I know the first was an Archive Memories. So I didn't see anything of use. But it does mean that he can get into R&D now for relatively little. So a lady token, a credit for the Ice Wall. Sorry, just a laser token for the Ice Wall. And then 3 or 4 credits for the Archer.
In this deck, I do no ice. So it's just... Okay.
There's no really good solution for dealing with an Atman. I mean, I could trash the Archer and install something else. Something like I don't know, there are kind of janky options like experiential data or something to just toy with the strength of an ice, or corporal troubleshooter, but only works once. So I could have resed the lasers. I believe that was the lasers. I could have resed the lasers, but I felt like I had to respond to the R&D threat. So I spent my Vitruvius token on only 4 credits economy, but I kind of needed it. And installed more ice and R&D. But that's not enough. So I installed even more ice and R&D. Just in case he thought that he could get in. Same thing for a lucky find. It costs a lot of clicks, but it's, with a couple of prepaid, it's totally worth it. Then I decided the moment was there to use the lasers. So up comes Janus, a new problem to deal with.
So, it may be, I don't know if it's fun to play as.
And that was my comment there. I really enjoy playing this deck. It's a little bit ropey, but it's really fun to play, just because you get to res stupid ice.
What I don't like is this deck against R&D big stuff, because I pull out the ice, bumping right.
So I was able to pull another Janus out of R&D. I do like this, being able to use the lasers to res a big piece of ice, and then pull out a copy that I can put somewhere else and also res. So James used a scavenge to refresh his lady.
You can scavenge for other programs. I'm not
I'm not necessarily sure what the thinking was on this. I feel like scavenge might have been better used elsewhere. Maybe not. I mean, he has a self-mod on the table. I'm assuming he has, say, another copy of Lady, but who knows? I find scavenge a strange one. I guess it is best used on breakers that run out like Lady.
Both of these high strength dice have many subseats. So. It's definitely better than the other one. I'll use this one as a video instead of that previous one.
So James draws a couple of times and just takes a credit.
What is in the bin?
I feel like the opportunity to go after Eliza's has passed. It's definitely late game. I don't know what I'll do in James's position here. It's so expensive to get into R&D. He will have R&D pressure in hand. So I used the Eliza's to res Archer on my own turn. I don't know if that was necessarily a great idea. Didn't feel like there was much HQ pressure, but I'd just been trying to get it res the whole game. So on click 1, James plays Quality Time to load up his hand, but it would transpire that he didn't really care about what he drew. He was just trying to get some fodder to run through Janus.
There are no code gates on the board.
I don't know, but you know.
Yeah, okay,
3 are index.
You're going to get in twice.
So James installed Cyber Cipher in case the unres piece of ice was a code gate, I guess. I mean, the only thing it could have been that I could res would be a quandary, but that would stop him dead. He has played an indexing, but he's trying to work out if he can actually get in twice. He changes his mind, which is a good idea. For those who are not aware, the indexing is a terrible play against a Foundry R&D that has unresed ice. Because on the first run, you just don't res the ice, let them rearrange as much as they wish. And then on the second run, when they try to get an agenda, you just res ice to shuffle R&D and undo their indexing work. So yes, my advice to you, never index the Foundry unless they've already used their ability that turn. So he decides to make his eye instead. He just walks through Janus because why not? Takes 4 brain damage, losing of interest a clone chip and a same old thing, which is good.
I'll keep the run. I'll keep going with the run.
I did not res that. I can't remember what it was. I think it was a code gate, maybe Enigma. But he can break the ice wall. He can pay 4 to get to the archer, and he's got access to 3 cards. So he accesses punitive, and game-winning agenda. So he had incredibly few accesses, but I guess that is the strength of Shaper. He can use it very carefully. A couple of well-timed Maker's Eye and a legwork at the start of the game. Got him the win. So it was a really interesting game. I felt like I was on top for the whole of it, but obviously in the end came to nothing. So in summary, James's deck was a Prepaid Kate with all the self-mod and clone chip program fetching tech that you'd expect out of a Shaper deck. It was all event-based economy, made more efficient by the prepaid voice pads. And it's fairly good. I think that is, in the end, the deck that he took to the Oxford Store Championship. My own deck was a Foundry glacier deck with a mix of very cheap and very expensive ice. The idea being that the very cheap ice will do defense work at the start and can be, even if you only have 1 or 2 pieces, you can pull more out using the Foundry ability. And the big ice is not really intended to be hard resed, but can be resed with Elizas, essentially, and ABT sometimes, accelerated beat test when it's scored. I actually also took that deck to the Oxford Championship because I quite liked it. Yeah, so that was a practice game for the Oxford Championship, and congratulations to James. Thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.